Okay.
Hi, I'm Jill Chivers.
And I'm Imogen Lamport, and we're from 16 Style Types. Now, one of the, what they call the dichotomies of type is often the J for judging and P for perceiving. That's really misunderstood.
Yes.
And it's because, people hear J equals judgmental.
Yes.
And so therefore we're judgy types. And this is where there is a misunderstanding of actually what it means.
And P, that you're somehow more perceptive than other people in an ESP kind of way, or just more insightful or whatever it is. So part of the problem is the naming of them.
And really what it refers to is that the P refers to that the perceiving function, which is your intuition or your sensing, is your extrovert function.
Yes.
Or that if you're a J, that your decision making, so your feeling or thinking, is your extroverted function.
And this is to
That's
do with,
what it means.
Sorry, I cut you off. I didn't mean to. This has to do with type dynamics, which we'll talk about in another video. But J and P have value as concepts in and of themselves. There are some type practitioners who believe that they're just signposts, and they are that too. But they also, in and of themselves, are concepts that you can see show up in relationship, and they can be the source of enormous conflict between people.
And I think this is another area. We've talked before about innate and learned behaviours. That this is another aspect where often it's very hard to pull apart what's innate versus what's learned. And particularly in, the Western world is very much a J world, I feel. And the work world is run on schedules and time and, certainly, but maybe if you went to South America, it's more of a P world, or where our time is a little bit more of a fluid concept in the way that our Western, our Western cultures have it's a clock on, clock off sort of thing, which is a very J concept in some ways.
And my experience is that the confusion runs mostly in one direction. P's who think they're J's.
Yes.
It's much rarer, although it happens, for a J to think that they're a P. And part of that is because of the world in which we live. That the world of work often has either a very clear sense of J or a J overlay to it. And that can often happen in personal lives as well. This can happen as well. I'm a J at work and a P at home.
Yes.
We get this a lot. And our view is that just cannot be true. That you may, whatever your preference is, that what you may be reaching for is some form of psychological balance, which means you're accessing your preference opposite, and that is perfectly natural. Not only is it natural, it's to be expected for human beings, adults who are psychologically healthy, that you should expect this to happen. Doesn't mean you've turned into your opposite.
No. And it's also learned behaviour. It's like I can learn how to reach my decision-making function more quickly at work because that is required in the time I have.
Yes.
It's not because it's my preferred. My preferred is different from what I have to. In fact, one of the fascinating things that we're both J's, yet we were talking about deadlines.
Yes.
We both will set ourselves deadlines because we both work for ourselves. There's no boss that says you've got to do this by a certain day. There's nobody else setting our deadlines in the way that many of you might have other people. So we both do it for ourselves because it's a useful thing. But what's fascinating is just how our attitude to it is quite different. Because for Jill, her J is her dominant function. So her feeling is her dominant. It makes, that's versus for me, it's my auxiliary function is my J. And so I don't need to get there quite as fast. And you describe how making a decision is for you, or how making a deadline, what does it do for you?
Oh, well, deadlines they're wonderful, they're necessary, they provide a safety net, and even for things that don't really require deadlines, I will set them for myself. They're not even talking about them as deadlines kind of is a bit of a misnomer. It comes down to almost every aspect of my life. I'm thinking chunks of time, the washing's going to hang out then, and then this is happening during that time, and very much aware of time and things happening and doing things in advance. This trip coming to Melbourne, I was thinking about what I was going to wear and what I was going to pack and what it would fit into, and making decisions. Because once a decision is made, it's done and I'm on to the next thing. And too much ambiguity is unsettling. It clutters up my head, and I need that for other things, primarily interacting successfully with other people who are important to me. That's what I need the space for. So if I've got all this outstanding, undecided upon stuff, it's literally like a room full of boxes and stacked up newspapers, and it's a mess, and it's very difficult to live with.
But you also talked about it actually. It's a motivating in a really positive way for you.
Yeah, having a deadline just spurs me on. It's a hugely huge motivator.
But yeah, very positive. And it's funny because for me, I put a deadline on because otherwise I might not make a decision.
Yeah. Right.
So it's more of a otherwise nothing would ever get finished.
Yeah.
Because I know that if I don't have a deadline, I can, because my dominant function is perceiving that, therefore I just want to keep bringing more information in. So I know for me, when I'm putting a deadline on means, well, I have to make a decision. And in fact, say, going out to restaurants, I want to be the last person who orders most of the time, unless I hate everything but one thing on the menu. Because most of the time I need that waiter standing there for me to actually make a decision.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I won't. I'll be scanning the menu going, oh, do I feel like this? Do I feel like that? Oh, that thing looks like, I can't, because I'm constantly, I'll be looking around going, what do other people have? I'm wanting to bring in more information to decide. So for me, it's not always positive in the way that you talk about, like it's motivating. I'm like, it's motivating, but so I'll do something.
More a kick in the pants.
It's more a kick in the pants than it's exciting, I've got a deadline. Yeah. Now, interestingly, a PE might come quite differently at a deadline.
Yeah, and this is interesting in the word plan and P tend to have a bit of a testy relationship, and I've sat in many a corporate workshop having discussions about J and P, and P's feeling really annoyed at the reputation they have as being unreliable, and this tends to be one of the stereotypes that the P's don't get things done, or the way they get it done is so different. And of course, a lot of scheduling and planning tools are developed by J's to curb what this P behavior and how it can seem so random. And often the word organic is used to describe how P's approach things. And depending on the other letters in your type code, because P never stands alone, there can be this sense of exploration or going where things lead, or needing to take in information and never wanting to close off things too soon. And sometimes what can happen in that process is circumstances have moved on so much that you're no longer gathering data around the correct thing anymore. So this can be one of the downsides to it. But there's a massive upside to it, which is sometimes J's can spend so much time planning and putting dependencies and percentages complete onto things, on things that never happened, and they can often miss out on a lot of the spontaneous joy that can happen when you are much more responsive to what's happening in the moment, which is often SP, or available and awake to the possibilities and the options, which is a bit more NP. And these are things that J's can miss out on. And as I'm aware of that, as a J, planning my spontaneous time, I'm going to be spontaneous between 2 and 4.
Oh. It's like having a surprise. Do you like surprises? And this is a question, is like, do you like a surprise? And people go, yeah. And Joe will go, when I know it's coming.
Yeah. Right.
It's like, I can plan to do nothing for a day. But I planned.
Do you hear that?
I've made a decision.
She has planned to do nothing. I'm exactly the same. I'm planning to do nothing, which is really, really different. Now, I live
or be open to do, if something happens.
Yes.
I plan to be open to spontaneousness.
And what's interesting is that is within boundaries. And that is the key thing. J's are aware of the passage of time. They have an internal clock, and there are boundaries around that. Now, I live with the P, and it's not like this. This is where J's who think they're P's, all you need to do is have any kind of ongoing interaction with the P's, and you know how different they approach time and task. And this sense of just literally anything could happen in that moment, and or the possibilities that could be explored and brainstormed. And it's just super different.
And look, I found, so we've talked to some people, but I plan. Because plan is a word that is very much used, particularly in the type world, as a J. It's a J word.
Yeah.
And
technically, it is more associated with J.
But it's just they just plan very differently, and they plan in many ways for contingencies. So, for example, on how a P might plan that can be very different from a J is I have a friend who's a surgeon, and she was telling me how she gets the surgery list for the day, and she goes, "Oh, I've got to do this surgery, that surgery, that surgery." So, as a J is more likely to put out a full plan. They'll look at the list, make a whole bunch of decisions, going, okay, and they'll probably have done that the day before.
Quite possibly.
So they know what they're coming into that day. Versus...
And they will stick to that plan.
And they will stick to that plan. Versus she will say, I'll get in and I'll look at the list and I'll go, okay, well, Mrs. B, that's going to be maybe about a 4-hour operation, so we're going to do that. And then when that's finished, I'll look at my watch and I'll go, okay, I've got 15 minutes before everybody goes to lunch, so I'm going to do the 15-minute one now.
Yeah.
So it's a plan, but it's a spur of the moment plan in the way that's quite different.
And I would characterise that as in the moment getting things done.
Yes.
So I'm happy with the word plan being used by Ps, but in the type world, that's what I would call it. The in the momentness. Now this is an ISTP. An INTP surgeon might approach it in a different way, but there's that pragmatic in the momentness which you get with SPs, and Ps are really good at planning in service to a value, a goal, or a principle, and that's another thing that distinguishes them. J's just aware of the passage of time when we plan because we plan. It's like it's self-evident.
Yes.
And it's different for how Ps approach time and task. So if you have a preference for perceiving, we'd love to know a little bit about this word plan or getting things done, scheduling time and task, or if you're a J in relationship to P, how you do it and how you find working with someone whose preferences are different to yours.
And I think too, just one last thought. One of my P friends put this to me the other day. She said, I'm lucky to have all my ducks in the same pond, let alone my ducks in a row. And
I love that.
And I think that's just such a great example. Now she's an SP.
Yes.
But it's a great example of the, have I even got enough ducks? Versus the J is more likely to go, oh, I've got this and I've got this and I've got, so it's that which one are you?
Yeah.